see is someone who actually knows what it's like to be in that pressure cooker stretch of water. He commanded ships through the Strait for the U.S. Navy. Retired Admiral Joe Sestak, and former congressman from the state of Pennsylvania and a Democrat. Great to have you. I want to call you Admiral right now because that is certainly the title that we want to address here. But looking at this and weaving it into the global markets, what do you make of what's going on? You've been on ships that commanded through that strait, have you not?
Yes, both a small ship, a guided missile frigate, as well as an aircraft carrier battle group that I took in there as a precursor to the Iraq war we just had. Tough waters, Liz. There are hundreds of small cigarette boats with the similar outboard motors that cross between Iran and the UAE, only about 30 miles away, smuggling cigarettes. Is one of them an Iranian guard that is going to come after you? Just 2 years ago, 5 of those small boats that belonged to those Iranian Revolutionary Guards circled a DDG of ours, and we took them under fire. We have, as you know, 20% of the oil going through there. The last time the Straits was closed down was back in 1973-74, where OPEC gave a virtual closing of the Straits and said, we're not going to sell any more oil to the United States of America. Our stock market plummeted in that. And you remember the lines. You're too young. The lines were
I do. I absolutely do, especially in California, Joe, where we had, my dad was a doctor, so he'd put a sign on his car saying, I'm a doctor, I need the cash.
This is immense. And as you just mentioned just before this, with China going into a potentially hard landing, the EU on the cusp of going into a recession full time, this would be an immense impact upon the global economy.
What does it say to you, Admiral, that while everyone's stressing it was a civilian-run boat, that there were U.S. Navy sharpshooters aboard? It just goes to show how prepared our military truly is.
This is a United States naval vessel. It is under the laws of war. We have several of these supply ships. This is an oiler that are manned by a civilian crew, but the captain is a naval officer, and we always embark on them a military detachment to do the self-protection, since we don't want civilians doing acts of war. This is, by no stretch of the imagination, a United States naval vessel. We can't back away from that. But we trained that military crew for months prior to our deployment to make sure that they have the proper rules of engagement. They fired flares, they had searchlights, and they took warning shots. These are well trained, but this is really tough because an untoward incident can go into a conflagration at a very sensitive time right now.
Okay, as for right now, we don't know the exact details. There's an investigation underway. It could have simply been one of those smugglers you were talking about, or a fisherman, but what if it does turn out that it is indeed captained by Iranians who had some insidious interest in affecting what happens in there? What does the United States government need to do at that point? We've had a lot of saber rattling, but no real action.
At that time, we need to make sure our guard is up first and foremost for our troops out there. We have a second aircraft carrier coming out there, so we keep it 2 at all times. But we will go through a third party probably and begin to lay out what really happened out there. We used to have with the Soviet Union and even with China, we have today something called the Incident at Sea Agreements. Even when they were our adversaries, we had those. I always advocated we should have one with Iran, that you actually have the ability to help ameliorate some of these tensions. Liz, you might remember back in the 80s, we shot down a civilian airline of about 300 civilians. So this is tough out there, but we will have to lay this out very well, because I have no doubt that this crew, so well trained, did it right by the book.
Our thanks to retired U.S. Navy Admiral and former Congressman Joe Sestak. Thank you for coming on the program to really clarify what's going on there.
Good to be with you, Liz.